All right, Coco. Welcome to Soccer Appetite, the platform where trying to put out other people's experiences and journeys throughout the game of soccer so it can help them with making maybe some better decisions or helping them along their journey. So I appreciate you being willing to open up about your journey throughout soccer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm super excited. So this is actually the first time I've asked someone for their statistics. So I'm going to actually
Mhm.
rattle off some statistics, which will lead us into our conversation of your journey into soccer. But so you went to Oaks Christian High School. You were named Marmonte League Offensive MVP in 2019 with 11 goals, 9 assists. You finished as a three-time All-Marmonte League Selection and multi-time program offensive MVP, finishing with 30 career goals and 25 assists. And we're actually going to hop right into your Cal Poly statistics, but we're going to go back to those high school statistics because
Mhm.
I actually have some questions because I was super intrigued to hear those stats. So, freshman year, you appeared in 15 of 19 matches. And those who don't know, you went to Cal Poly SLO Mustangs. Sophomore year, unfortunately, there was COVID, as we all know. Junior year, knee injury, which actually brought some thoughts to my head. So we'll go back to that. Senior year, you appeared in all 19 matches, starting 17 of them. You scored your first career goal against Stanford, which is super like, wow, that's awesome. And then you scored in a Long Beach game to tie it up in a draw. And then you also received college sports communicator academic all district honors upon graduation. Holy moly. So let's go back to the high school because the goals are interesting to me because when I was around you and coaching you, we kind of played you more, I would say, in a defensive role at times. So
Mhm.
kind of leads into two questions. So one, do you consider yourself like a single minded player in terms of position, or do you actually like if someone were to ask you, hey Coco, where did you play in the field? Like how would you even respond given that you scored 30 goals playing high school?
Mhm. Okay, so for me in club, I feel like it was either I played forward or I played center back. And it was different when I got to Cal Poly because I came in as a forward and then I went to defense. And then I went back to forward. So I never like felt like I had a true position. I was just kind of pretty versatile.
Hmm.
But then talking about high school, I was center mid. So I was attacking mid, so that's why I had all of those goals. So I honestly have played every single position on the field except for goalie, between
Shocking.
high school, club, and
Not goalie.
college.
But you're so tall.
Not
You're like 6 foot tall. No, I'm just
oh
kidding.
yeah, no.
So how did you become comfortable with that? Because a lot of players sometimes gets kind of like pigeonholed into a position.
Hmm.
So that's why I was so when I saw all those goals and I thought about you, I was like, man, she played more like as a center back
Hmm.
for us at times. But how did you get guidance on that, or did you just become comfortable with that? Like, what was your experience being so versatile?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm the type of player where if a coach is like, we're gonna try to play you in this position, I just go in it like 100% and try my best and then learn along the way. If it's if I'm allowed to be on the field playing with my team, I really didn't care like what
Hmm.
position I was at. And obviously the goal of the game is to try to score. So it was awesome in high school and I was scoring all the time. But for the most part, I mean, it was tough because sometimes I was like, I have no idea what to do in this position. Like, it's so different than what I'm used to playing. But it's honestly just all about communication, talking, watching film, and just getting better at whatever you're thrown into.
Yeah, I mean, so was there a time in your career as you played, whether it was the club, high school, or college, where being versatile allowed you to put yourself in a position for more success? Because I talk to players all the time about not being, again, like single-minded in a position because one, you just understand the game better, and everyone
Mhm.
else's like maybe pressures within those positions. But was there a moment where also that kind of helped you out in terms of like being able to do something or get something?
Yeah. Well, I feel like when I was recruited to Cal Poly, it was more like you're a forward. And so for my whole like preseason going into Cal Poly, I was like, okay, I'm going to practice driving to goal, scoring goals, thinking more as a forward. And then as time went on, they wanted me to start playing outside back.
Mm,
And I feel like I did really well because I knew what was going on for my competitor, like the outside forward side, and I knew exactly what she needed to do in order to get by me, just because I practiced that all summer long.
mm.
And I just had to adopt a new vision of the field and more like defensive. And that honestly made I feel like helped me be more successful. And I talked about that with my coaches because they were like, because you have that experience, you know what's coming at you and you
Hmm.
know how to stop it. So yeah.
You mentioned training individually. So I never had talked to you about this before when I was around
Mhm.
you, but did you do private training throughout your journey? I mean, you just mentioned it when you were getting ready for Cal Poly, but because
Mhm.
what's interesting is, right, like someone who loves being a forward, right, or maybe more natural, like to me, it's surprising to talk to players who don't spend time in front of the goal and spending time on manipulating the ball by bending it or curving it, or pretty much being in a situational type scenario of like how to strike the ball, depending on where you
Mhm.
are in the box and all that kind of stuff. But did you do like one-on-one training like throughout your growth?
Yeah, I would definitely say this is gonna sound silly, but during middle school, I did it like every weekend, every time I had free time. I
Okay.
don't remember the trainers' names. There was like too many to
Yeah.
remember. But once I hit high school, I just feel like we turned well, I was ECNL turned academy, and I just felt like all my time was being taken with
Mm,
just practicing and already being at the field and then trying to get good grades on top of that. So I feel like during school it was harder to do private training, but in the summers I took advantage of that. I don't think I had a coach during high school, but like I would go out with my sister who
hmm.
also played soccer, and we would just help each other out, do 1v1s. I would go out with my fellow Eagles club mates, and we would go out and shooting and like do 1v1s
Yeah.
during high school.
So speaking about your sister, so what's the age difference again?
I want to say 3 years. She was a
Okay.
senior and I was a freshman.
So you had an
Mhm.
opportunity to play with her in high school and college, correct?
Yes.
What so what was that experience like being able to play with your sibling in high school?
Mhm. In high school, we played right next to each other, like
Oh wow.
the entire game. It was interesting because I always have looked up to her. We play completely different styles of soccer.
Hmm.
She's more technical, speedy. I'm more aggressive, fast, I'd say, or was. um, and my parents always told us like you guys play completely different styles, but you guys are both great in your own ways. And I was nervous to play with her because I was like, maybe we won't mesh,
Mm.
and maybe we'll just start yelling at each other.
Hmm.
But honestly, we played to each other's strengths, I would say, in high school, and it was so much fun. I mean, I was so young. I was probably, what, 14, 15, and my stats from freshman year were the same as senior year. I had 11 goals. So I feel
Mm.
like she brought a lot of success for me. In terms of scoring goals, she was the assister, I was the scorer. But once we got to Cal Poly, we did not really play besides a couple games together, just because her she had a head injury for her junior year,
Mm.
which really affected her brain, and like it was so tough for her to continue playing. But she tried her senior year. She didn't push it too hard to the point where it was you can't go back. But she played in a couple games. You could tell like it affected her play. But yeah, we didn't really play that much together, especially because I was outside back, and she was center mid still.
That's such a cool experience to have because I'm sure people. have and will be in your shoes where they're going to be potentially playing with their sibling. And yeah, I think that was kind of
Mhm.
cool that you were like, I'm not so sure we're going to mesh together because of our style differences.
Yeah.
What would you say was the reason why you guys were in such different contrasting styles? Was it just the development of like in different environments in terms of like, clubs and coaches, or was it like physically? Like, was your sister, is she taller than you? I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit about her being a little bit quicker than you.
Mhm. Mhm. We're the same height.
Mm.
Or I guess she's 1 inch on me, but I'll say we're
Okay,
the same
okay,
height.
okay.
Honestly, I feel like it was the way we were raised playing soccer.
Mm,
I feel like she was always kind of everyone wanted her to play like Messi, like short, quick bursts,
mm,
juke someone out, then pass it. Like she never wanted to hold onto the ball and be selfish. She wanted to give everyone else around her success.
okay.
I feel like I was the opposite. I feel like I was a little more selfish. Definitely held onto the ball more than I should have at times. But I feel like it was because my coaches were like, "We want you to hold the ball. We want you to go score the goals," and that kind
Uh-huh.
of built me up and gave me confidence to be like, oh, "Okay, maybe I should be more aggressive going to goal. Maybe I should hold the ball a little bit longer."
Sure. No, I mean that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So obviously you played at an elite level. Do you remember like was it a game or a situation where you thought to yourself like I have something here, like I'm actually like, because obviously like now you definitely have the confidence because you did it, right? Like,
Mhm.
but was there a moment or was it a coach who kind of said something to you, or was it just yourself, or was it your parents or your sister who were like, or where you kind of said to yourself like I could actually do this, I could actually play ECNL, I can play Division 1 college, like, so what was that experience like?
Um, I feel like it kind of goes back to, like I said, middle school.
Mm.
Um, I was just my dad always pushed me to be the best, and I feel like on every team leading up to becoming ECNL, like everyone was always like, "Oh, you're so good! Like you're scoring all the goals." So like it was more like parents and coaches just always like giving me this confidence. Like we love watching you play. You do so well.
Hmm.
So I feel like there was an aspect of that, but there was a game in particular that I always have a flashback to, and it was in Las Vegas, and my sister was playing after me. So I was right before her, and I remember scoring a hat trick that game. And we were losing the entire time, and then the second half I just decided to score 3 goals. So then we won 3-1. And I remember my club coach at the time was like, "You're different. You have something special." Like
That's
it just like
awesome.
gave me the confidence that I think I needed to be like, "Okay, I can go play Division 1 soccer."
Wow. What position were you playing in that game? Do you remember? Were you playing attacking mid or were you playing higher up the field?
I was definitely up top somewhere, probably a winger. I think I was, out wide. Yeah,
Okay.
winger.
So you
Mhm.
mentioned playing ECNL. What pressures, if you look back, did you feel while playing? Because you were in the transition period of when Coast was still like the show, being in
Mhm.
Premiere, and then ECNL became like the next big thing. Um, when you look back, like, you know, what did you feel was like a transition, or what, or when did you realize like, oh, ECNL is like the place
Mhm.
to be?
Um, it was just kind of looking at the older girls because
Mm,
I feel like I had so much respect for, like, the girls that were older than me, like 3, 4, like 2 years older than me, and I was like, "Oh, like, I know that they're good, and I know that they're gonna go Division 1," and they were, like, committed and all of that. I was like, "Okay, they're gonna do this. I need to get to that level in order to be like them and to go to these places."
mm.
So I feel like it was just, watching the people before me and seeing what they were doing, and I was like, "Okay, I need to be like that, and this is what we're gonna do."
So
And also I
essentially,
feel like
go ahead.
oh, no, go
No, no, you
oh,
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say my parents always were just like, "You're gonna do whatever is needed in order to go play Division 1 because we
Mhm.
believe in you." So I feel like that was another aspect of it.
So essentially, you looked at the players that were now in the ECNL or
Mhm,
at that high level, and you asked yourself, okay, I got to pretty much do what they're doing, if not better. And then you just also mentioned like you put yourself or your parents were going to make sure they put you in the exposure environment that would allow you to eventually have that success for a college coach to see you play. So would you, if you were to talk to a young player,
Mhm.
whether male or female, like when do you think it's important to play in the ECNL? Because there's a lot to be said about, playing and then also being on a team but not playing very much. Um,
Mhm.
so obviously, I think we both kind of agree that being in the ECNL is, especially for the girl side at least right now, is like where you need to be to get exposure at least your junior, senior year. But looking back now, like, do you think it's important to be in the ECNL or playing on an ECNL team at like say 12, 13?
I would say for me, it mattered the most when I was in 7th or 8th grade. So I'm
Mm,
not quite sure
wow.
how old that is. But I remember that my parents wanted me to even train with the older girls that were on the ECNL team because they were like, we want you to be at that level so that you're better than everyone else at your level.
Mm.
So I feel like it was like around middle school where it was like you need to start performing in order to be recognized by sophomore year of high school, junior year of high school, freshman year of high school even. So I would say it you develop so much during your like teens, I want to say 13, 12,
Hmm.
that honestly starting then was very beneficial for me. I don't know what the culture is like now, but when I was on that program. I loved it. It was amazing.
Here's an interesting question as you're speaking. So you had a lot of guidance, it sounds like,
Mhm.
from people around
Mhm.
you. A lot of good guidance too. I mean, playing up against older players, whether male or female, is huge. Um,
Mhm.
would you have thought about those things if you didn't have someone kind of like guiding you in that direction?
No, no
Mm.
chance. I didn't even want to, honestly. I just remember my dad's like, "Okay, we're going to practice," and I was like, "My team's not. It's not today." He was like, "No, we're playing with the older team today." And it happened that my club coach coached my team and the older teams, so
uh,
of course he knew me.
mhm.
He wanted me to be there in order to improve my play. And it was that combination between my coach and my parents being like, "You're gonna play up because we want to see you progress."
And how was that first practice? Or like, because I'm sure after a few sessions you got super comfortable. I'm sure hopefully like your sister and her friends who obviously knew you obviously made you
Hmm.
feel comfortable. But like obviously at some point now it's about competing in that environment. So like,
Yeah.
did it take you a few sessions to get comfortable, or did you just right away like boom jump in?
No, I was terrified because I honestly I didn't want to be there. But looking back, I was like, that was so great. Um, and I wish I appreciated it more. But I just didn't want to be there because I was like, no one's talking, or like they were talking to me, but like talking to me like I was like younger than them, and I didn't like
Hmm.
that because we're playing at the same, like we're playing together. I don't want you to treat
Hmm.
me like I'm a child
Hmm.
when I'm like beating you sometimes. And I I looking back, I wish I appreciated it more, but it was definitely terrifying at first. But you have to think beyond who you're playing with. You got to think, oh, this is helping me for something else in the future, not in the moment. No one's talking to me, you know.
It sounds like doing that, going back to your high school experience, and you played for a very, tough high school in a very tough league, and you had those goals you mentioned your freshman
Hmm.
year. And obviously, when
Hmm.
you're playing as a freshman, you're either 14, 15, and then you're playing against like potentially like an 18-year-old, so
Hmm.
that's a big age gap. But it sounds like all that training and that at that younger time against older players almost prepared you for that moment.
Oh, for sure. Once I got to freshman year of high school, I wasn't even scared of playing against the seniors because I had already been doing it when I was in middle school. It definitely set me up for success in regards to my play. And there's always like that factor of fear that either helps your game or doesn't, and I feel like the fear that I experienced helped my game,
Mm.
um, and it didn't, like, make me insecure or overthink everything, which I feel like I would've if I didn't have that previous experience playing out.
Yeah. Wow. That's great advice, especially for players who want to get to that next level, to be open to the idea, or being comfortable slowly training above their
Mhm.
level, so they get better. What was it like playing for such a dominant high school? I mean, uh, I know I coached against you a couple times. Obviously, I coached you at the club level a little bit, but I know coaching against you at the high school, like, what was it like for you being in that kind of maybe vibe of like, we're expected to win because we are who we are?
Mhm. Honestly, I loved it. I love that feeling because it's like we have a sense of purpose
Mm,
and we wanna play well and show everyone our skills, and I feel like at the time, I wanna say it was my freshman and sophomore year, I had so many talented players around me that from different clubs at different ages, and I was honestly so excited about that. It was like a breath of fresh air because I wanna say, like, my club team at that time wasn't doing too well. So it was so different because I was like, "Oh, we're good," compared to my club team where it was like, we're not succeeding as much as I
hmm.
wished we did." So I enjoyed that pressure because it was like, "Okay, we all need to play at the same level, play well together, and we're gonna win." So I liked it, yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like you thrive. I mean, it sounds like it's like almost like not a coincidence after listening about your journey of like middle school and playing up, and it
Mhm.
sounds like you were just like loving that environment.
Yeah, it was I loved playing high school for sure.
Um, I want to talk about your ability to lock in, um, at any point in time during your training or when you're playing, because I found when I ask this question to players, they don't actually think about it. So, for example, like, you aren't who you are right now as you are when you're playing in a certain environment. Let's just say
Mhm,
it's, club or even high school or, college. Like, you kind of change your mentality for that hour and a half, 2 hours that you're in that environment. Like, did you ever look back, or do you realize now what put you in the position to be able to do that? Because I remember distinctly watching you play. Like, you, to me, you were like a silent assassin, because like you
mhm,
didn't say anything, you just played,
mhm,
and like you just
mhm.
like did your thing. Was it like a song, or was it, did you think about something, or was it just the joy of playing at a certain level that got you so hyper focused in that time?
Mhm. I would say for me, in order to lock in and really kind of stop overthinking the things you shouldn't be thinking about, I just think back to the feeling of scoring and, like, how excited everyone is and how happy everyone is to have you on their team, and I always, like, think in that moment of just, like, everyone around you being happy, and I
Mm,
feel like that's what gets me, like, "Okay, we're gonna go score, we're gonna be better, we're gonna do this."
mhm.
So I feel like in my head, sometimes when I go silent, that's, like, me overthinking and overanalyzing the game, but once I start to, like, be vocal, kind of talk more, that's me trying to plot how to score the next goal and thinking about the next step that we need to take.
um
So
if anything, when you were in a goal scoring drought, or maybe you went like 2 or 3 games without scoring, what,
mhm,
obviously I think anyone who knows, who played in your position, would know how that feels. You almost feel like there's pressure, because it's almost like you're telling yourself like that someone else is expecting you to score, even though it's like, it's more like yourself talking to yourself. Like,
mhm.
how did you get over those hurdles when you were in a slump, maybe at certain times when you're playing striker, or you're in a position to be able to score?
I would honestly just focus on the smaller things,
Mm,
making sure I'm connecting my passes, making sure that my runs make sense when going to goal. Um, Because if you focus on playing as a team, it's gonna come. If you focus on connecting your passes and you're driven for the goal, it's going to come. So I just feel like it's being patient and just remembering the small things that will lead you to success because it's not guaranteed you're gonna score every game. You could
Hmm.
try your hardest in some games, it's just not gonna come. But I just feel like focusing on the things you can control is probably the what I was telling myself at that time.
So, did you ever do you remember a moment when you actually were in a slump and that you like
Oh
maybe when I
yeah.
say slump, I mean maybe like something that really like when you were playing, you're like, oh man, I'm like not playing well. And so you focus on the simple things. Do you remember like where that moment was? Like club, college, high school?
Oh, for sure. I've experienced so many times like that in club. There was just like you're in front of the goal and like you completely hit it to the goalie or you hit it over and it's just like how did that just happen? And then your coach yells at you as he should. And
He should. What? Oh, hold on, hold on, hold on. Go on, go on, go on, go on.
well, not yell at you, but be like, you know, you had that, and you're like in your head, like, I know I had that, but then
Uh-huh.
it's just like having to remind yourself, there's what 10 minutes left in the game, 45 minutes left in the game, whatever. That's time that you can go redeem yourself. No
Hmm.
one's gonna remember like the one you whiffed. They're gonna remember the one you scored. So I feel like I always tried to remind myself, like, even though I just messed that up, like I could go prove myself, prove to everyone that I can do better. So that
I'm
was
ki-
even if yeah.
you mentioned coaching, so I gotta ask because
Yeah.
so as a player, when you look back, what was the healthiest coaching you got? Meaning, like,
Mhm.
was it the raised voice or yelling at times, or was it the just talking to you and maybe helping you solve the problems? Like, for example,
Mhm.
if you shot on goal with no pressure on you, say at practice, and you hit it at the goalie's hands, would you want to hear the phrase very commonly used, unlucky? Or would you actually want someone to say, hey, like, did you think about your plant foot? Did you think about, where the goalie was? Did you think about maybe bending it versus hitting it with your laces? Or was it like, come on, Coco, like, something like that? Like what if you look back, like what helped you
Mhm.
actually though?
I would say the second one because it's like you're giving advice on how to not do that again.
Hmm.
I'd say the first one where you're just like unlucky. Yeah, there's certain situations where like it was out of your control and it was unlucky. But I feel like that one is so in your control and like that's just a technique error.
Hmm.
Um there I definitely feel like there is a time when you need to really get on someone, maybe yell at them just to motivate them to like want to be there, but not
Hmm.
in that scenario. I feel like because that if that happened to me, I know I messed up, and I don't want the entire field to hear my coach being
Right.
like, "You messed up." I want them to hear my coach being like, "Okay, next time you have that opportunity, this is how we're gonna fix it in order for you to find success."
Yeah. So I-
Personally.
I'm curious what you think about this story. So I
Mhm.
remember going to get my national D license, and
Mhm.
we were all separated into groups. So there's like four groups, and my
Mhm.
buddy went with like the hardest instructor. Like you knew this guy was not going to play around. So my buddy was doing a shooting drill, and mind you, we're only like 15 yards away, and he's running the shooting drill. Someone hits the crossbar, so my buddy says, unlucky. The head coach stops the entire session and he's now yelling as to what you referred to as making a mistake and everyone looking at you. So I was
Yeah.
like, thank goodness it wasn't me, but I learned a lot. So then the instructor says, how is it unlucky if he didn't score? And then my
Mhm.
buddy and everyone actually was like, I mean, technically he's kind of like correct. It's just we don't
Yeah.
like maybe how it was done, but like the message was you're reinforcing something that actually wasn't the end goal, which is scoring a goal.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
goes back to like that conversation of like, well, could that player have, stayed over the ball with their chest or their knee, or like maybe again, maybe they play a little bit softer, or again, they're plant foot.
Yeah.
So, do you remember what environment you were able to get that level of coaching? Because obviously everyone's on their own journey. Like, do you remember, was it being around, the college environment where you felt like a little bit more at ease with the coaching that you were like receiving?
Um, I feel like I, for the most part, loved all of my coaches and felt at ease with all of my coaches. I've never had any issues with anyone. Maybe when I was younger, I
Mm.
definitely, like when I was in elementary school, I remember one coach and I just cried every time I got in the car. I
Oh.
was like, I can't do this. But I feel like for the most part, every coach I had um, gets to know you and kind of talks to you and caters and coaches to how they feel you will receive it the best.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's what makes a coach great. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to have some of the best coaches. So
Hmm.
I feel like there wasn't a specific time, but I mean, each coach has their own temper as well. Like something will set them off suddenly and just they'll be mad at you. But no, yeah, for the most part, I feel like I've had great coaches. Yeah.
And I know you've have found yourself in captain roles.
Mhm.
Did you get guidance as being a captain, or did you kind of just think naturally like who you are? Because again, like you're not, again, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you weren't too vocal. You're more like, I'm gonna show you what we can do as a team. And
Mhm.
yes, I
Mhm.
will like say certain things here and there, but I'm more of a
Yeah.
show you by leading versus like
Yeah.
vocally leading. Like, what would be your suggestion to captains at young ages or even just any age? Like, is it just be who you are, but also keep in mind this, or like what would be
Uh-huh.
your advice?
Well, I feel like for the most part, the reason why I wasn't always yelling, always being vocal was because I feel like sometimes players get caught up in what everyone else is doing
Mm.
and then starts to forget what they're doing in their role. So I
Hmm.
feel like I spoke when I felt like I needed to, um, whether that was like encouragement or, oh, hey, this next play, let's do this, or I don't know, something like that. But um, I feel like for young captains, it's kind of just finding who you are on the field and your voice, sort of. Because I haven't always been captain, and I've had a couple captains that are super vocal, like to tell everyone what to do and how to do it, and they're great on the field. But then I've had other captains that are completely silent and just do their job, and they're a great role model that everyone looks up to. So it's
Hmm.
just kind of finding what you're comfortable with and what will help you be a good example to the team, yet um, still playing your game and feeling comfortable on the field.
So you mentioned going back to your club team at one point in time. I remember also too as well, because when we took over, I think we weren't the best ECNL side in the club. But after a year, you guys as a team were untouchable. I remember
Mhm.
going, I'm not sure if you remember this, but we went to Silver Lakes. We played 3 games. We won every game, 1-0 only, because again, we weren't like this goal scoring machine team, but we were
Yeah.
so well organized and that we could move the ball so comfortably that I remember actually coaches asking us, like, what are you guys doing? And,
Yeah.
we kind of told them, but um, when you look back to going from an average side to now excelling, from a player's perspective, what was it? Was it training more? Was it having two coaches at that point in time in your club career? Like, was it just the natural growth of that time of like, age? I have my own opinions from a coaching
Mhm.
perspective, but like, what was it on your end to go from kind of feeling like, man, we're struggling to now like, man, like people can't touch us?
That's a great question. I feel like it's a mix
Mm.
between everyone finding each other's strengths and weaknesses and
Mm.
having the time to find those and um coaching. and like move the ball faster, do this faster. Like I feel like we kind of played quick passes around people. Correct
Mm.
me if I'm wrong. I feel like that was like
Hmm.
what we did. And that's what we found was our strength as a team, but we didn't know that. We had to find that, and I feel like it took time, it took coaching, it took getting to know each other on and off the field better.
Mm.
Because I mean, it's club, like you don't see these people throughout the day. You see them for an allotted 2 hours a day. So it's
Hmm.
hard to like really get to know people and kind of know how they think. And I feel like we all put at that time extra effort into getting to know each other, getting to know how each other brain works. And I don't know, we just all wanted to find success because I
Mm.
feel like we had so many losses at that point that we're all so motivated. We're on the same page. I feel like that's the biggest thing is being on the same page and everyone wanting it.
Yeah, you said the word time like a handful of times in that explanation,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of goes back
Yeah.
to like, well, we trained 4 days a week. And
Yeah.
I remember when we first announced that, I think some people naturally, which is okay, were like, that's a lot. But the way we structured it was, Monday was futsal, which you guys went crazy about being inside, not in the sun
Mm-hmm.
or out under the lights. You're on a small basketball court in a gym, a wood basketball court, and you guys just scrimmage essentially the entire time. Like, yeah, you warmed up, but
Yeah.
essentially it was just like, let's throw the ball out there and start playing, and hopefully don't break a window. Um,
Yeah.
but then yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was actually on the field, and
Mm-hmm.
so 4 days a week. Then most of you guys, I'm assuming, probably rested on Friday. Then we had either an event or a game on the weekend. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like time, but also very thought out time. It wasn't like we're just going
Mm-hmm.
to train 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, and kind of like run you guys into the ground. Like it had to be an experience.
Yeah.
What Looking back on those 4 days, what was did you look forward to the most Mondays, or did you enjoy also going on the field? Or like what was it when you look back, like, oh, I really loved this during training?
Mm-hmm. I feel like I feel like no one's ever done futsal. I mean, I don't know in the club before, so it was new, and we're all like, "Oh, I don't know if we're gonna like this." But it honestly, like, when it was probably what, an hour, 2 hours, and we wanted to
Mm,
go for 3 hours. It was
mm,
just so fun because it's like you're playing like a little game, like a kid's game,
mm-hmm,
but it's like translates so much into the game, you don't even realize it. You're having fun, you're playing fast in a small space, getting the ball off your foot, and when someone scores, it's like, "Oh my god, yay, we scored," because the the size was so small.
yeah,
I feel like we all just got addicted to it
mm-hmm,
because and honestly, I feel like that's what helped us so much in the game because we started playing like it was just futsal. Like we all got closer together, started playing around people, and then we were finding more success. So I feel
mm-hmm,
like it fully translated into the game. And then I feel like on another practice on the field, we were focusing on like position play and like this
mm-hmm,
is what we would do in this position, we would do this in this position. So it's not like, okay, now go, let's go see you play. It was like strategic, like instructions, and I feel like that's sometimes missed. And I feel like that's what also brings success because once people know, oh, okay, I should play here and I should go into this space after, it
mm-hmm.
translates into the game. So I feel like those 2 days of the week were so important. And obviously playing for the other 2 days was very fun, very important. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like those were essential and for us to find success.
Yeah, it puts a smile on my face to look back at those days because I'm not sure if we were strategic on that Monday. Because if you think about it, if you had an event
No.
or
Mm-hmm.
if you had a game, you're
Mm-hmm.
usually exhausted, especially those who play the full
Yeah.
90 plus, right?
Mhm.
Sun, all that travel, that kind of stuff, just mentally, physically drained, and whether you had a good game or a bad game. But like Monday was like kind of like perfect because it was like, imagine if you had to go to the field for 2 hours after just playing. Most
Mhm.
players would be like, oh, I'm sure even coaches would be like, I'm exhausted. I needed to kind of recover. But Monday was like, we can't wait to get to like futsal. And I remember
Mhm.
we would show up early to get there and get set up. And I think we actually used like rolled up gymnastics, like falling pads. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how you properly say that. I apologize to all the gymnastics people who just heard this. But like, yeah, we would like roll them up into like a Tootsie Roll and then like put them against the back of the court. And that was like our goal. And I think someone brought like a heavy, obviously like a futsal type ball that was like a little bit more dense. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, you guys loved it. And I think also we had two teams doing it. So we had like the A team and the B team doing it. And yeah, you just saw the
Mhm.
results. Is that something that you would do in the future now that you're kind of, I don't want to say retired, but like if there was like a futsal league around, would you be like, oh yeah, I got to go play that? Or
I feel like at one point for sure.
yeah.
I I definitely I love soccer. I miss the game,
Hmm.
but my injuries have really taken a toll and
Hmm.
on my body, and I just kind of want to give my body some time before I put cleats back on and actually try. Because I like even this morning I went and passed the ball around, but I wasn't trying, you know. Um, I definitely think in my future for sure, but maybe not right now.
So before we get into your injuries, I have to ask you about the tortillas because a lot of people don't know about that ritual that I mean, it's to me, it's the most funnest environment to be in. Especially when you see the organization of the stadiums knowing that there's going to be tortillas like thrown
Hmm.
on the field. What's funny is I remember Santa Barbara, I went to a men's game and like they were so organized. They had like volunteers on the field ready for like the tortillas to be. Look, you just rolled your eyes. I love it. And like they had volunteers ready so they can go pick up the tortillas.
Yeah.
I remember being at Cal Poly and there was no organization. It was just like players were like kicking them off the field. So, do you have any insight as to being a player in that environment? And for all those who don't know, so when Santa Barbara and Cal Poly meet each other, there are some tortillas being thrown on the field, mainly because the mascot for Santa Barbara is the gaucho, and he has that like sombrero type bill, and so it's like the disc, and so it's like a resemblance of that. But as a player that's been through that obviously for 4 years, what what do you take away from that experience?
Well, it only happened in the men's game. So,
Oh, I didn't know
um,
that. You didn't
yeah.
experience it?
Well, funny
Oh,
enough,
man.
our senior year, a couple, I want to say, like of the male athletes at my college just brought tortillas and started throwing them on the
Oh, I
field.
like that. Okay.
And it was probably like five, but we would like pick them up and just throw them to the side. There wasn't as many people at our games. Obviously, there was like the normal amount. But the men's games, it would be decked out. Like every single student comes. It's like our football games because, no offense,
Hmm.
our football team isn't the best.
Okay.
um, but uh, it would be the best. Like the men love it,
Mm,
and like you said, it was funny because I think it was this year. People just started throwing random things on the field. It wasn't even
mm.
tortillas, it was like water bottles. And the Santa Barbara coach was like, if you don't control like your stadium, like we're gonna cancel this game. And so then the security started getting down on people.
Yeah.
But it's such a fun environment and the boys love it. It's amazing. It's a good time.
So what you're saying is we should start a movement for the women's side to have more tortillas thrown on the field than a men's game and start that friendly rivalry. And also back to what you
Yeah.
said, I mean, a plastic bottle is way different than a
Yeah.
flour or some form of a tortilla that's soft and very flexible. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
no, we don't obviously condone plastic bottles being thrown on, but yeah, tortillas, that's a whole different thing. So yeah, I think maybe we should start a movement, which I mean, people may not like, wasting the tortillas, but it sounds like, you girls would love it.
I just it's funny that you're saying this because I've always been like, if the men have that many people coming, then why don't the women? And it honestly
Mm,
just comes down to advertising. Like if the schools like come to this game, then people are gonna be like, okay, like let's go to this game. And that's the only time our school like advertises a game is against Santa Barbara for
Santa
the
Barbara,
men's.
yeah.
And they don't do it for any other game or anything for the women's really. Like they don't have a ticket booth for any of the other games that I know of. Um,
Wow. So it's, I mean, we're getting into some deep things now. So I feel like, yeah, we should start. Maybe the next we have to find the schedule, and then we have to promote it ourselves,
yeah,
and get that
exactly.
spirit going.
Hmm.
So I have some people who have been listening to these interviews. One of them is a player who's 2010, so she's 13. She actually
Hmm.
watches film, Coco. She's like I said, she's 13. She watches film like once a week and breaks it
Awesome.
down, has a notebook. She's super obsessed with the game. I asked her because she watches the interviews. I'm like, hey, do you have a question? I kind of gave her a little bit of your story. So her
Hmm.
question was, and she has a follow-up question. She says, and
Hmm.
we might have kind of touched upon it, but at what age did you feel the most pressure?
Oh, it's a good one. The most pressure, I feel like it was eighth grade. So what is that?
Mm. Yeah, right around the
Thir-
same time, 13,
Yeah,
14. Yeah.
because it's like that's the transition point of when some girls start viewing soccer as like I'm not a hobby, like I just do it for fun, and some girls take it seriously, like I want to go to college for it.
Yeah.
And it's like at that point where you can either put in that work and be better than the people around you, or you can just kind of take a step back and just go for the ride, you know? Um, so I'd say around that time for sure. And it's also like when you're transitioning into becoming a woman and like people um are, you know, wanting to do other things other than soccer and you're like, sorry, I have a game this weekend and people don't understand it and you're just gonna you have to say sometimes like sorry I can't. So I
Hmm.
feel like there's social pressure and soccer pressure.
Oh yeah. Oh man. That's perfect. Yeah. No.
Mhm.
So her follow-up question, what age did you feel the most confident?
Oh,
Let's say like your peak where you felt like, man, I am
oh,
untouchable.
my peak. I feel like I had a couple peaks. No, I feel like there was one point in my life where I had verbally committed to college
Hmm.
and I had been doing well in high school and club, and I was like, I am at the point I want to be. And
Hmm.
then at that point, I got comfortable. You know, I was like, okay, I'm already there. Like, I don't really need to like put in as much work as I have been. So then I kind of coasted for a little bit. And then I kind of had a reality check, like, that's not going to do. And so then I went back and I started like working so much harder than I had been. And so then by senior year, when I scored 11 goals in high school, I feel like I was getting back into how I used to feel like I'm putting all this work in, it's paying off. So I feel like it for me it was just me. I don't know if that's going to be for everyone, but I would say like keep working hard throughout high school. Don't do what I did and get verbally committed and then think that you own the world. Um
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's good.
Mhm.
Um, and so I also have parents, obviously, who listen, and so I asked a parent who's listened to, I think, most of the interviews. I was like, hey, I was like, do you have a question that you would like to ask as someone who's a father to, someone who's on that path? So
Mhm.
again, it might have been touched on, so feel free to keep it short. What were some of your biggest ups and downs, and what was the roughest part of your journey?
Um, would say that the biggest ups were, I mean, for me, just all the times we won. I feel like there was the showcases, I want to say. That's like when we won those, it was like, oh my gosh, we just beat, I don't know, five other teams. Like that was the
Hmm.
biggest up. And it's like all the parents are like, yes, like we drove all the way here and you guys won. Let's celebrate. So I feel like that was the biggest ups. I would say the biggest downs was when you lose a game you should have won.
Oof, yeah.
Those are the most frustrating, and or when no one on the field wants to be there. and
Hmm.
play. That's really frustrating, especially for the parent side. Like, we drove all this way, you guys don't want to play, really? And then you said the biggest obstacle, the biggest,
Like the roughest part of your soccer journey.
the roughest part I would say was I would say getting over injuries for sure. That's really mentally tough, because for a bunch of reasons, but it's hard to get hurt and then at that age and want to come back and be better than you were before. But you have to have like a great support system and people that will encourage you through it. So I'd say that was for me.
Yeah, so his follow-up question was, how did you navigate it? So it sounds like you answered it there with having a really great support system
Hmm.
around you.
Yeah.
Um, so we've mentioned the injuries a few times now. What's so funny when
Yeah.
you told me that via text, I was thinking back, and did you wear an ankle brace quite often?
Okay,
Sometimes?
so yeah, I did. I did.
Hmm.
I've rolled my ankle a couple times, but it's mostly been my knees.
So what was the situation? Or so it sounds like there was like a story behind all that. So I would love to hear,
Yeah.
unfortunately, your situation with your knee or knees.
Hmm. So it actually happened, I think, sophomore, junior year of high school. And that's why I didn't score as much because I didn't play that season. I
Hmm.
think I had like 2 or 3 goals. And what happened was I was 1v1 with the keeper. She grabbed my leg instead of the ball and twisted it. And so I don't know exactly what happened at that point, but it messed up, I want to say, my meniscus.
Hmm.
And I went to the doctor about it. He was like, just go to physical therapy and you'll be fine. That's what I did. I got stronger. I was fine.
Hmm.
Fast forward, we get to college. Suddenly, that injury, which was my cartilage, decides to break off and it's floating around my knee. And I couldn't play anymore because it was so painful to even walk. And
Hmm.
so I needed to get surgery to get that piece of cartilage removed,
Hmm.
kind of micro fracture or micro puncture my cartilage, something like that.
Hmm.
And so then I basically didn't have a junior year in high school. I didn't have a junior year in college because of that one knee. And then senior year of college, I didn't care if I was injured or not. I was going to play. So my other knee had the same issue, but not as bad. There was just a piece of cartilage missing. And I recently got surgery 2 months ago for
Oh
that.
wow.
But I didn't care if I was injured or not. I was like, I'm a senior, I have to play. But
Coco mindset.
throughout, yeah, throughout high school and senior or college, I twisted my ankle, probably tore my thigh and my hamstring. Not tore. What is it? Stretched?
Yeah, I mean, like you can like just yeah stretch. I mean,
Yeah,
stretch it, pull it.
hamstring and
You
thigh.
know, like
Pull,
yeah, yeah,
pull,
pull, yeah,
pull. Yeah,
pull.
I pulled those a couple times, but you always got to get back. Yeah.
So talking about the knee, so can I take a
Mhm.
guess? I'm gonna say it was your plant foot knee.
For which
Or did
one?
you have both?
Yeah. So the first one was my right knee. The second one was my
Okay.
left
Oh,
knee.
okay, okay.
And the right
Oh,
one was
wow.
because the goalie took my leg and twisted it. And
Oof.
that translated 4 years later, the bone finally like chipped off. Super
Man.
random. Don't know. Hopefully
But
that
you
doesn't
would
happen to
do it,
anyone else.
but you would do it all over again. Oh, I'm sure it'll happen to somebody else. Trust me. Trust me.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to touch on something that you said a lot, and I think it's important for people to hear. You mentioned a
Mhm.
lot about your father really
Mhm.
helping put you in positions to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I know a little bit about your father's story.
Mhm.
Um, Without myself giving the details, because I don't know them intimately, I don't want to, say anything that isn't true. But I know that you and your family went through a really rough journey, and you probably still do at times,
Mhm.
with your father's diagnosis of ALS. So you were around 13, 14 when that
Mhm.
became aware to everyone. What was that like? Obviously, still trying to reach all these pinnacles in your life and ups and downs, and one of the people in your circle now going through their
Mhm.
own, battle
Yeah.
journey. What was that like?
Oh man, it was so much. There was definitely ups and downs for sure. I would say, um, I there was a point in high school I wanted to quit
Mm,
soccer completely just because I was mentally overwhelmed and
mm,
soccer was just I don't know, something I felt like that could ease my anxiety, my pain a little bit, but I took like maybe 2 weeks off and then I was like I can't live without this sport. But he was the person that pushed me the most to get out of my comfort zone. And then he was diagnosed when I was 13. He passed away when I was 18. So I was a freshman in college. And I feel like his focus obviously was not helping me improve in soccer. And I could tell like I wasn't doing that for myself. So I never thought that I feel like I could have reached a level that I never reached if the situation never happened. He continued to keep pushing me, but circumstances and life happens, and he still was my number one fan. Came to all the games, came to all the practices. He would always he would always be the loudest in the stands, always. Like he probably got kicked out of 5 games just for yelling in general. So when you say that, did I care about the coaches yelling? No, I cared about my dad yelling. And I was always like, Dad, be quiet. I was always that kid that was so embarrassed.
uh-huh.
But but then he got to the point where he couldn't even speak anymore. And then I
Mm,
was like, I wish that I took it in when he was yelling at me.
mm,
Um, so there's like two different points in my life. I feel like pre his illness and post his illness where my soccer game was completely different.
mm,
Obviously, as you get older, you get better, but like I feel like I could have been even better if our focus as a family wasn't more towards his illness and more towards my sisters and I soccer.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it affected us both physically, mentally, financially. It was extremely tough on us, but
mhm.
I feel like it brought us closer as a family than anything ever could. Um, there was just so much love, and the the club community, the high school community, our college community was so loving, so supportive. Um, it's all just about the people you surround yourself with and the people that love you. It was honestly, I mean, I can't go back and change time, but I feel like what it was what shaped me into who I am today. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing all that. What would be your maybe advice to someone who's going through something similar, whether it's an illness
Hmm.
or an injury, whether it's themselves or somebody else that's really close to them?
Hmm.
What would you say that they should be open to in terms of either
Hmm.
doing or accepting, like as they
Hmm.
go through this, period of time that is tough?
Yeah, I would definitely say talk to someone because I feel like at times, like personally, I bottled a lot of things up and was extremely emotional at times, extremely quiet at times. But as teenagers, you go through like this phase of like I don't care, and I mean I'm probably still through that phase, but like at times, uh, I I held too much in where it was
Mhm,
too much, and then at my highs I was great, at my lows it was so low. So I just feel like talking to someone, working it out with them, whether it's a therapist, a parent, a sibling, a friend, doesn't matter. Just staying vulnerable and making sure like people around you know what's going on with you. Um, that was what I feel like I experienced.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I feel like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I've heard this now a few times. Um, People who have gone through things, and Brian, I'm not sure if you remember Brian on my boys team, but he went to Colorado and he struggled his first year being there in Colorado away from, his family. And his biggest
Mhm.
suggestion again was also just talking to someone. Like
Yeah.
as much as we have access to, these phones and that, it's like I guess maybe I'm not sure if it's pressure to admit that we're struggling or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, but it sounds like, you know, being vulnerable and, talking to someone about what's going on is very, very helpful. It won't solve the problem, maybe, but right, it'll make it feel better because you're not
Hmm.
alone. I mean, everyone's going through something,
Hmm.
So, with everything that we've said, what would be your suggestions or advice to someone that is, trying to be in the shoes of yourself in terms of your trajectory of playing, right? Because,
Hmm.
playing at a big club, ECNL, playing at a big high school, expectation to win, playing at Cal Poly SLO Division 1, what would you say is maybe not the one thing? I don't like that because there's always a multitude of things, but what would be your biggest suggestions to someone who wants to reach those levels?
I would say the first thing you should do is try to surround yourself with people who have similar goals because you got those people around you will push you past even where you think you might be able to reach,
Mm-hmm.
and you vice versa for them. So I feel like that's the biggest thing is just putting yourself in an environment where everyone or a few people want the same thing. Second, I feel like we touched on this, but time is extremely important. I mean, as much as I sometimes hated putting the time in, it was so important because the amount of times you touch the ball, like you're just going to get better and better and better. And I feel like once you hit a certain point in life, school becomes harder. And so trying to find that balance of, okay, I'm going to play soccer for this many minutes today, and then I'm going to study for like an hour or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like time is so important. And yeah, I feel like those for me were the biggest too, finding time. And if you have the financial stability, hiring a private trainer is so helpful as well because they obviously know what they're talking about. They know how to help you. They know the game. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that would be the third. Yeah.
I want to wrap up on your award for college,
Hmm.
which kind of signifies that you can compete at a high level and also
Hmm.
perform in the classroom, which I know is a big thing for many programs.
Uh-huh.
College sports communicators academic all district honors. So
Hmm.
can you specify a little bit more to what that honor is?
Yes. I believe that award is for the people who were either starting like the starting lineup or starting like a on the bench. I don't know what that term is, but
Mm-hmm.
you were the 22 that were
Eligible.
chosen for that game. Eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And it was that plus if you had like a GPA that was higher than 3.5. So those were the two uh, what's the word? Those are the
Eligible,
two.
or no?
Yeah,
Is it different?
no, no, no. Those are the two
Are you sure? Are
qualifications.
you
There you
sure you got
go.
this award? No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Oh, no, seriously. Those are the two qualifications you needed to get that award. And I think only four of us on the team of
Wow.
40 got it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, our team is extremely talented on the field and they put the time in school. It's a really hard school. Um,
Do you miss school, like the academic side, like the actual like going to
mhm.
class and being around people, having open discussions?
I do. However, I'm going back to school. So I am taking in the time that I'm not at my desk, putting my nose in a book.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd miss it.
So, just because you probably don't know this, so when I was graduating, I sat with all the smart kids. I was like your
Mm,
average kid. I just kind of like all I gotta do is pass. I don't need to get like
yeah.
an A. I just all I gotta do is pass.
Hmm.
My senior professor walked up to me and said, "Hey, Mike, when you graduate, you're gonna get a tassel." And I said, "What for?" and she said, "Oh, you're graduating in a certain percentile of your class."
Mhm.
Coco, my next response was, "Oh, that's probably a mistake. You probably want to double check that so you don't give it to me because it's probably not accurate." Her immediate response was, "Oh no, when I saw your name, I double checked because I didn't believe it." So we were both on the same page that I was not academically astute back in the day.
Uh-huh.
I actually myself do miss that environment. I do miss
Yeah,
school.
it's a great environment for sure.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned one thing, and I actually want to ask it, and then we'll kind of wrap up. But
Mhm.
you mentioned how difficult it was to, or how difficult it is to be at a school like Cal Poly, which
Mm,
most athletes actually do soft sciences versus like a
mm,
hard science due to the
mhm,
the workload.
mhm,
And for those that don't know, soft science is like sociology, psychology at a bachelor's level, and then a hard science is like engineering. And Cal Poly SLO is, I think, known mainly for engineering. I
mhm.
know there's obviously some other really good programs, but I know engineering is a big one. Um,
Yeah.
what was your experience like with the school workload and then like the
Mm.
demands of, weightlifting and training and recovery and practice and traveling?
Well, for me, freshman year was like a culture shock
Mhm,
because I had gone to Oaks Christian, which was a private school, from grade 6 to 12th grade. So
mhm,
I hadn't been at a public school since I was in elementary school, and that in itself was a culture shock that you could go to class wearing your gear for practice. So I would go to a class and then go straight to practice, and I was never that never happened. It was like 8 a.m. and I would be doing that. So for me, that was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's at any college. But it wasn't until junior senior year where I was like, oh my gosh, this is hard. I went to a hard school, and there's so many people around me that are so smart, much smarter than I, and it was so nice to surround yourself with such intelligent, hardworking people because like you said, you surrounded yourself with that. It makes you do the same thing. You're
mhm,
just grinding. You're more motivated. And I have this one friend in particular
mhm.
who's my roommate now. And oh, sorry. And she was on the soccer team, same major. She was probably the most hardworking person in the classroom I've ever met, and I just thrive to be like her. And if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have tried as hard as I did. So, and I tell her that all the time. I'm like, I
Aw.
owe my GPA to you. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
okay, so after I just unloaded all these questions that I think,
mhm,
man, I know for a fact those who are listening could gain a lot from your experience. Is there
mhm,
a single question that you have that you'd like to flip the script on myself? And since, because usually in the coaching dynamic with a player, it's like, pretty much we're the
mhm.
ones usually always giving a lot of information. I mean, obviously there are times where there are dialogue, but
Yeah.
usually it's, buttoned up,
Mhm, mhm,
so is there a question after all these years that you have that
mhm.
I could answer for you?
I would say I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna word this right, but
I mean, you got honors, so I hope you can word it properly. No, I'm just kidding.
how do you navigate each player individually and how they receive information? Because I feel like each player receives information differently. And like as a player, you find that out with your peers. You're like, okay, I
Mm.
can't yell at you because you're gonna start not wanting to play soccer now. But I feel like as a coach, it's different because you're trying to give them instructions and you are the one that's subbing in and out. So I was gonna say, how do you navigate each player individually?
I would say the biggest lesson that I learned too late, and I wish I would have learned it earlier, is to not compare player to player.
Mm,
When I first started coaching, I would ask myself, why does Coco work so much harder than Mike?
mhm,
So then I would get tougher on Mike
mm,
versus telling myself, Coco's Coco and Mike's Mike. So one thing I do with the teams that I coach is I explain to them that I will never compare you to somebody else, and neither do I want you to. I want you to
Yeah.
compare yourself to yourself. So when
Mhm.
you do that, I think you take down the guard, because
Mhm.
everyone, we're all human. We just want to be liked. We want to be included. We want to, be a part of something together. And when you start pinning people against each other and isolating people, it's like just chaos. So
Yeah.
I think looking at someone for their strengths is a very easy way, and also what they're not naturally good at. So, for example, like spine players versus like wing players, and not putting a wing player in a spine position or putting a spine player in a wing position and asking yourself, why aren't they able to do certain things? And it's like, because they physically can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think over time and being around high level coaches and environments, you kind of learn to distinguish between finding what individual players are good at and
Mhm.
then pushing those players. Like, for example, I have a 9-year-old player right now. We were in League Cup for the springtime, and it was like a game where we needed to win. And this in particular player, both his parents played like over in like England. So like his
Mhm.
culture is different than some other people's cultures. Like soccer is ingrained in this young boy's
Mhm.
mind, and he's got a wicked left foot, Coco. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Mhm.
But it was like halftime, and it was in San Bernardino. You've been there before. Super hot. They weren't resting between games, of course. They're 9-year-olds
Yeah.
kicking the ball around. And so as he's going back on, I said, "This is the difference between good players and great players." And he just looked at me and was like, "Whoa!" And like, what was so crazy, Coco, was after that game was all said and done, his mom heard what I said, and she
Mhm.
said I actually told him that like during the week, like just after practice one time. So he's
Oh,
already getting it
really?
from like his mom, right?
Mhm.
And like in the game, which gave me kind of like goosebumps, was that I said the exact same thing. But see, I couldn't say that, or I wouldn't say that to somebody else on that team, because that would
Mhm.
just crumble them. That would put them under
Yeah.
so much pressure. It would be a negative response.
Yeah.
So I think it's also along with looking at what they're good at and what they're not good at, it's what is their motivation, and so then you know how much you can push them,
Yeah.
which takes time. And yeah, even when I was around you, it's been like 6 years, 5 years, so I'm a whole different coach than
Yeah.
I was back then. And I wish, honestly, I wish I was now back then, so that way could have
Mhm.
added more to like
Yeah.
your fuel of fire. So, but yeah, it's not easy. I think some people look at it as it's like, oh, how lucky he or she can coach. It's like, well, depending on where you're coaching, how you're coaching, what the goals are, it's difficult. But that
It's
was a good
hard.
question. That was a good question. Did you have a follow up question, or is that good? That was that was a good question.
Well, I've always just wondered,
Sure,
like,
yeah, go for it.
how, like, a coach approached me compared to how a coach approached someone else, and how, like, the motivation was just different by saying different things. It was I just, like, always was it mind boggled me because I don't think I could ever coach, honestly. I would just be like, "Go do it." And I would be like, hopefully they can figure it out. But I feel like it takes a level of patience too that I commend you for and all coaches for, because it's stressful and you want it how you want it, and sometimes it just doesn't go that way.
I did have a flashback as you said all that, and thank you. I did have
Mhm.
a flashback at what you talked about yourself. Was you,
Mhm.
so you actually thrived in pressure.
Yeah.
So when you hold someone accountable, it puts so much more pressure on that
Mhm.
individual. And I remember there would be times where I would feel like we needed to pull you aside individually and give you more pressure and hold you even to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I
and
remember that.
I feel like that like lit a little bit of a fire. And what's so funny as we
Mhm.
talk about it now, it only was successful because you had been in that situation before, and it
Mhm.
actually helped you. So, for example, like we all knew what you were capable of doing and how far you wanted to go. So then when we pulled you inside and said, "Hey, like you're the one that we expect to do all this," so
Yeah.
like, and when that happened, like I feel like you got even more laser. Like it's so funny. I don't think I ever told you, but I always called you like the silent assassin, because like you
Mhm.
really didn't talk much. Like I mean, you kept to yourself a lot. So, which
Did
everyone's just,
I?
yeah, I mean, I mean, well, maybe not amongst your peers. Maybe you were a little bit more vocal, but
No, yeah.
yeah, I felt like I think you really had a lot of respect for your environments and like coaching. And so, like, it was very
Mhm.
like, yeah, but on the field, it was just like, man, you were just a menace. Like, I would hate to play
Yeah.
against you. So, but again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about some personal experiences. I really do think this is going to go a long way. And I keep going back to my mind about the tortillas and how we got to start the revolution for the
Yeah.
side at Cal Poly in Santa Barbara. Although they might not like it, but I think we should do that. So, yeah, just want to say thank you again, and yeah, just maybe there'll be a part two someday after you maybe start coaching or maybe start playing again. Look at you, you're like, no, I'm not coaching. I love it. I love it. You're like, no. Would you
I'm
ever
gonna be
coach Coco or
honest.
no? Would you ever coach or no?
No.
No.
Well, see, my assistant coach wants me to coach like I want to say younger
You'd be great,
girls,
Coco. You'd be
and
great.
I'm up for that. I don't
Hmm.
think I can do like people that are trying to, to be good, you know? I think I
Okay,
could
yeah, I
do
got you.
I think I could do like the basic, this is how you pass.
Yeah. Nah, you'd be great, Coco. I mean, come on, man. You have the experience. You know I mean, you're gonna still make mistakes, obviously, but
Yeah.
I hope you yeah, I hope you do that. I hope that'd be awesome that you could give back to the people that helped you get back to where you have been able to get to. So yeah, coaching some youngers will be fun for you. But well, other than that, I
Yeah.
wish you good luck in your master's program when you decide to jump into that. I'm sure I'll be
Thank
in
you.
contact obviously with you, but yeah, I just wanted to again commend you. And also I just wanted to say how inspiring it is to hear all the details of your journey and how
Mhm.
difficult it was for you mentally and just how you kept kind of raising that bar for yourself. So just I applaud you for that. It was awesome to hear.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, well I'm going to conclude this and I'll be in
Mhm.
touch.
Okay,
All
perfect.
right,
Thanks,
see you,
Mike.
Coco.